Hello Pondimp, well welcome to the first edition of John's Drop Box. It's going to be a monthly series in association with Pondip on what's inside the boxes, how to get the best from what's inside the boxes and how we actually fish the systems. First of all, we're going to take a look into June's box. That's the chod section box. So I'm going to go through each component for you, show you how they're used, and again get them out into the lake. So stick with me as I show you this month's June box, the chod box. Right then, as I said, now we're going to go through each component that's within the June Pondip box, show you sort of what they're used for very quickly, and then go from there. So first of all, what you've got is the Vardis choddy hooks. These are a size 6 barbless hook. Barbless, as I said, a lot of waters are insisting on a barbless rule. Chod hook, with a chod hook, what it's got is an out-turned eye. What that allows to do is to feed the stiff filament through the back of it and make sure that everything falls nice and straight in line. Very, very sharp with a really needle fine point on them. Next then you've got the products then, the baseline products from Tasca. You've got then the swivel chod bead. What that does then is creates a counterbalance to actually slowly sink your bait. And then you've also got the baseline tungsten bead. What that does then is, I said, on the naked chod setup, that allows the choddies to move back and forth between the two swivels and then yet again create that slow sinking. All the instructions on how to use them are actually on the back of the pack for you, so it shows you exactly what to do with the bits and pieces. Next then you've got the Gardner tripwire, £25. This is a stiff bristle filament, basically designed specifically for chod rigs, almost invisible in water with the fluorocarbon makeup of it. What it allows you to do is create a nice curve of the hook, almost extending the hook round. Means that when the fish comes along and takes it, and so that hook is immediately pulled down into the mouth with those tungsten beads creating a counterbalance weight. Next thing, the rigmarole bore rings. What the bore rings do is it's a dead simple, quick way of attaching your pop-up onto the rig. You can tie them on, you can burn blob bits and pieces through them, but it's just a lot easier with these bore rings. They're a 4mm bore ring, and then you basically just screw your bait on. Great for quick change baits, dependent on what colours are working, etc, etc. And yeah, again, everything on the back show you how to use them. Next then, you've got your ring swivels. What these are is basically a standard swivel with a ring at the bottom, as the name would suggest. What this allows to do is obviously free flowing movement of the rig up and down the line in between those two beads. So as I say, when it sinks down gently, that can actually move up over the top of weed, which is what you generally would use a chod rig for, is to cast over the top of low-lying weed. Then we move on to the pop-ups, and this one I've got the CC Moore Secret Obsession, a bright orange, really fruity pop-up. Yet again, dead simple, just screw them onto that bore ring. And what you want to create with the pop-up is a very slow sinking rig. So when you cast your lead over the top of where you're fishing, it'll actually then really slowly, with the aid of those tungsten beads, drop the weight very, very slowly on top of the weed. So yet again, whilst the fish are moving along, it's right in their face and they can't help but take it. Then you've got PVA bits from Pondip as well, a few nuggets and a bit of PVA string. Not necessarily going to use these on the rig. You can use them just nipped around the hook of a choddy, basically so that you know that it's going to, as that bursts, it's going to stick up in the water, and as the PVA nuggets melt away, it'll then slowly drop. So as I said, everything you've got in this kit is ready to go to build a choddy. So what we're going to do now is go through, show you how to use the bits and pieces to tie up my version of the chod rig, and we then show you how to put it onto the naked chod setup. Right then, what I'm going to do now very quickly is take you through how to use the components within the Pondip box to make your chod section. So you've got the hook, the bore ring, the ring swivel, then you've got your chod section you cut down, and then the baseline tungsten bead that's mounted on it, and then the pop-up obviously that you need to create your rig. So as I said, on the chod section there you've got your tungsten bead, and that is actually will be pushed down later on, but so we will need to take that off when we're tying up on the rig. So get your chod section, put it through the front of the eye of the hook, and then simply do a standard, what you call knotless knot whipping. And so you can use many times as you want. I tend to use about 4 or 5 times, and then what I also do then is whip once back up the knot, and what this allows it to do is actually stop the knot from compressing on a fish, and feed it back through the back of the eye and pull it nice and tight. So then what you've got then is you're left with this little tag end, which you can then mount your boring onto. So boring goes through the eye, and then feed it all the way down, and then simply just bend back the tag end and feed it back through the back of the eye again, and pull it tight. I said that's now going to be the sort of pivot point, if you like, for your pop-up, and I say that will then create a little bit of movement when the bait's attached. And give it a quick clip with a pair of blades, trim it down, and then what you do is simply light it and then press it down, blobbing it off, as it's called. This then creates sort of a bait holding position. Then get your tungsten baseline bead, feed the tag end through the sort of narrow end, if you like, which can be a bit tricky. So just make sure you get it all nice and straight, push it through, and then what you'll do then is once that's fed onto it, then simply feed it up the chod section. There we go. So then the tag end then is where you're going to attach your swivel. So move that up towards the hook, allowing you to attach your swivel. So yeah, again, through the swivel, through the small eye, not the big eye. The big eye is the one that's going to move up and down on the line. So attach that. Depending on what sort of weed presentation you're feeding over the top of, is depending on how you'll set it. Then yet again, I use a two or three turn blood knot. Dead simple knot, doesn't compress very well, so it's perfect. And yet again, because of the fluorocarbon so stiff, just the 2 turns is plenty. Pull it tight, get a bit of saliva onto your knot, and make sure then to pull it tight. And so you can use a puller tool, but say what you want to do is basically feed very gently, feed the tag end down so that you don't actually kink the chod section, and then just pull that nice and tight so the knot then beds down up against the eye of the swivel. There we are. Here again, trim off that tag end. You can blob the end, but I say those bristle filaments are so stiff you very rarely have a problem with them. Then feed that baseline bead, and I said the baseline bead's actually got a notch in it, a flat notch, which is designed to go over the head of the swivel. When you are feeding it down, make sure not to have it touch the actual barrel of the swivel, because that will actually hinder the movement, if you like, of the swivel. And then that's how it goes. I say it'll sink nice and slowly using that counterbalance of that baseline tungsten bead there. And again, to shape it, you can steam it with a kettle, you can kink it with your thumb. I say I'm not going to do it properly, I'm just trying to show you some methods. Make sure that everything is in line when you do either steam it or move it around. And then you've got that boring, as I said, nice and easy, quick change idea. So you can just screw your bait onto it. As I said, different waters respond to different colours in the spectrum. So I mean, it makes it easy for you to just pick up a different bait and whack it on, whether it be a bigger bait, smaller bait, etc. So that just simply screws on, and as you can see, that creates that movement for you. So I said it's and that's the sort of section all tied up. And I said you would then shape it properly, making sure you've got a nice curve. You want the sort of point of the hook almost parallel with the base of the blade bed, like that. There we are. And that then very simply is how to tie up your chod section. Right then, now we're going to go through just how to attach the chod section onto your main line. So what you've got is obviously get the end of your main line, and then that's obviously where your lead's going to be attached to, but first of all you're going to attach on your chod section. So get your baseline beads, put the line through the sort of conveniently made loops of the wire, feed the bead on at the top. That's going to be your top bead, that'll be the bead that's closest to your rod tip. What you want to make sure with these is they do actually slide up and down the line. These are purposely designed so that they very easily, as you can see, slide up the line. Next then, so what you want to do is get your chod section. As I said, that's that big eyed swivel. That's the one that slides up the line. Going to give it plenty of movement. As you can see there, that bead actually stops that swivel from going over the top, and that'll then hold it on the cast. And for sort of stop it moving up the line. Then get your second bead, that's going to be your base bead, thread it back on the line onto another loop, pull that through, and then that's going to be the one that then stops it being closer to the lead. Now I said the travel that you set between these is obviously how far that rig is going to be sort of up in the air, if you like, before it actually comes down onto contact. And then that travel then means it can move up and down the line in the weed section. This bottom end then would be what you would tie onto your lead, And so you can tie it on by a weak link or tie it onto one of these new clips that have come out. That then obviously once you cast out, you want that to be able to crack off so that the fish isn't towing anything. So you can see that big eye swivel moves back and forth. And I said with those tungsten beads and that tungsten line, it'll actually move across. And there we are. So as I said, if it cracks off, if you snap up, that bead will move up the line. That chod section will come completely off, because I imagine that bead's popped off, and then all that the fish is carrying then is your chod section. It's not carrying any lead or any line, and then eventually that'll come off. So that's how you actually use a safe chod system on the naked system. Obviously being naked means that it doesn't get seen very, very well. So thank you for checking out the June box for Pond Dip, and we'll hopefully catch up with you next month with some new fantastic bits and pieces.